live on YouTube from the beautiful Elser Hotel on a Greg Cote Tuesday. David Sampson has fled the premises, chased off by your screams. He is feeling wounded and hurt. We don't know when he will be back or if he will be back. What are you laughing about, Billy?
Because you did that. It's not the fans that chased him away.
Yeah,
it's
on you, buddy.
You kicked him out a couple of times, and you're reading him every mean thing someone said about him.
Not every mean thing, not even a quarter of the mean things. And I didn't do that. He did that. I'm
with Dan.
I was in Costa Rica.
Okay.
That's all we need from you, Tony, is limited fake David Sampson. I guess he is enraged at us. The audience wanted orders set forth, though. I don't know what happened yesterday, but evidently you guys let him take over the local hour.
I don't think it was a yesterday thing. I think it was a body of work thing.
Yesterday, because South Florida has had such a great month, because it's crazy. Miami men's basketball, Final Four. Women's basketball, Elite Eight. FAU, Final Four. Miami Heat, a giant upset in basketball, and then a hockey upset unlike any in the history of the franchise and very few, if any, in the history of that historic sport. Just an amazing week, and we come in on Monday. Everyone, see, expectations are tough, man. When people have expectations, they often get disappointed. They had the expectation that our show would be unhinged, and then we got Knicks fans, Stugotz, and David Sampson in the seats, and that helped nobody. And if that's the nature of the conflict, I'm willing to defend the conflict.
We counter with a homer, Greg Cote.
This is a market correction. Greg, have at it.
That's right. Greg Cote of the Miami Herald is in. He has been a homer in this market for local sports longer than anybody has been. He is somebody who pom-pom celebrates all of South Florida's victories.
Right.
And we right now have, outside of championship runs, and there have been a few, we right now are in the middle of the greatest week non-championship division this city has ever seen in sports.
Yeah, and you mentioned basketball, and that's pushed to the back now. What the Heat and the Panthers did in the first round, 8 seeds beating number 1 seeds, it was epic. And what the Panthers have done, beating, quote-unquote, the greatest hockey team ever, the greatest regular season ever in Boston, that was beyond epic. That was historic. The Panthers
beyond epic.
It's beyond epic. The Florida Panthers won 3 Game 7s in a row.
Is there anything beyond epic, though?
Yes.
He's cooking right now. Let him cook.
Okay, but historic indeed beyond epic? If we were trying to describe what Steph Curry did in Game 7,
right?
Is what is better? Put it on the poll, Juju, at Le Batard Show. What is the greater compliment? To say something is historic or to say it is beyond epic? Because if it's beyond epic, it is then historic, is it not? But if it's historic, it might just be epic and not beyond epic.
Correct. And what the Panthers have done is historically beyond epic. You have to put them both together. There is no topping that. We're never going to see another situation where a team down 3-1 wins 3 consecutive Game 7s, 2 of them on the road, against a team as great as the Bruins.
Well,
we're never going to see that again.
Here's why it was, for me, something that was beyond epic.
Thank you.
It's not merely that I got to enjoy the Panthers winning a Game 7 and an upset. It's as an added bonus of the greatest taste you've ever had in your mouth, the sprinkles of, and look, Boston is heartbroken. They went into the season not expecting that much from that team. Then the expectations got ratcheted to a crazy place, and then hockey happened. Hockey just happened to them, and Boston, which loses and remembers the losses because the way they care about sports there is really unhinged. Now Boston weeps into its chowder, just cries, and so much silence, and there was so much arrogance because the team had only lost 12 times all season, and now the greatest run. This is the greatest hockey run we've had in this town in a quarter century.
Yep.
That's the second best moment in franchise history.
Yes.
A franchise that was born in the early 90s.
They went through Lemieux and Yager. They went through. They went through
the
Lindros.
Bruins, Flyers, and Penguins on their run.
And I remember that Game 7 against the Penguins at home to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think the fact that they then got swept in the finals maybe takes a little bit away from it, but
You remember it wrong, I think.
It was on the road. They went on the road.
Oh, did I say home?
Yeah, you said home.
I meant home for Pittsburgh. Just kidding. But I could have.
Either way, Tom Barrasso got it handed to him.
Yes.
I could have meant that.
I could have meant. I said home. One of the teams was
Yeah,
home.
so
Technically, I was right on the mark. Hey, I'm old. I don't remember what happened 25 years ago, 27 years ago, whatever it was. But at any rate, I could make an argument that what the Panthers just did in Game 7 in Boston was the greatest victory ever. It was definitely the most emotional victory for me in franchise history.
It was also the way that game and that series kind of turned.
Right.
That one game kind of encapsulating the entire series of just Florida having to battle back against this tremendous team. But one of the great things about being successful in South Florida and beating that market is locally, listening to 98.5, the Sports Hub, has become a bit of a meme. And people are really starting to revel in Boston's misery, so much so that
no one more than you, okay? I will say it again. I said it earlier in the show, and I will say it again. I was blissfully delighted at seeing the radiant smile on my wife's face as she was in a Costa Rican river. She likes the outdoors. She likes Earth. And she looked blissfully happy. And it was the second person I looked at this weekend. Second place. She finished with the silver medal on happiness I saw on their faces, because in the glow of midnight, in front of what seemed like a sad television and a tube that was just radiating on his face, Mike Ryan, smirking maniacally, was just listening to Boston sports radio and enjoying. There is something, it is better this way. It's one thing to get to enjoy your team winning, but when you get the added bonus of knowing how miserable the other fan base is, how heartbroken the other fan base is, I don't think many people do what Mike Ryan does, which is just tune in to find where the misery is after midnight and just listen to Boston accents calling their hosts and weeping because they're so heartbroken.
But I had skin in the game. It was my Florida Panthers that beat their Boston Bruins. I really enjoyed it. Ryan Cortez, though, Parakeet, took it to the next level because
I can't believe what's happened around here where you're now the bronze medalist for Heat homerism and might be falling out. If Greg Cote, Ryan Cortez, Parakeet Cortez is number one on the list. Jeremy Taché is trying to rival the throne. Greg Cote might be third. Do you know how obnoxious our show must be when you're the fourth most obnoxious Heat fan, Heat homer?
This type of homerism is a young man's game, which is why you mentioned Jeremy, Ryan, and Greg. I can't. I'll admit, I lay down my shield. I cannot compete with these guys. But I was listening and enjoying the Panthers' victory. Ryan Cortez was listening and enjoying the Celtics' loss to the Philadelphia 76ers when he's a Heat guy, and he called the Sports Hub last night. And unlike the first time when the Panthers beat the Boston Bruins and the Sports Hub was not helpful in getting us audio, Ryan was kind enough to roll on his own audio.
All right, you guys have heard from us. Let's hear from you. We'll start it off with Ryan. He's in Boston. What's going on, Ryan?
Yeah, first time, long time, guys. I just can't believe the Celtics lost Game 1 like that with no Embiid. Joel Mazzulla is a bum. And the other thing about the Celtics is...
I'm a fireball.
Let's go, Heat!
That's not mature. That's not clever. And how is that the first call? How did he get on first?
He was that excited.
The crazy thing about it is that Ryan is a seemingly normal guy, right? When you see him and you talk to him, he's a normal guy. And then he turns into this, like, not normal person afterwards. And then he does things like that. It's like, who thought of calling a sports radio show, sitting on hold for 25 minutes? Hey, we got a break here. Hold on, whatever, 10 minutes. You listen to car commercials. And then he does this for just 5 seconds of it.
You sound like Mike Francesa.
Me?
Yeah, like you're confused at the idea of someone wasting their time prank calling like a sports talk radio show.
Yeah, because there's better things to do. I don't know.
Not much.
Are there?
Not much better than that. That was brilliant. Thank you, Ryan.
Brilliant?
That was great.
Watch
You
a
know
show.
what? You know
It made
A
us
lot of
all
good shows
laugh.
on TV.
Brilliant.
Read a book.
He's a single man, and he's enjoying himself, and he's having a
Take a
Monday
walk.
night. Let him have a Monday night.
You have diluted the word brilliant by calling what he did there
Brilliant. Did you see how he said he was from Boston? Yeah, that's just mind blowing.
Let's hear it again.
Do you want to dissect this? Brilliant.
And he also hit the music at the right time. He's got some of the cadences down to trick them at the beginning. I wonder how often he practiced this in the mirror.
All right, you guys have heard from us. Let's hear from you. We'll start it off with Ryan. He's in Boston. What's going on, Ryan?
Yeah, first time, long time, guys. I just can't believe the Celtics lost Game 1 like that with no Embiid. Joe Mazzulla is a bum. And the other thing about the Celtics is...
I'm a fireball.
Let's go, Heat!
That's
He
ridiculous.
just lobs it in from like 30 feet away. Let's go eat.
He didn't even try to fake a Boston accent, which I appreciate.
I don't know if you guys have seen what it is that Draymond Green has said on his most recent podcast on The Volume. He has said a number of different things recently. He says he has lost respect for Sabonis for not shaking his hand after the series. You stepped on his chest. And you're the guy who also wouldn't shake Tristan Thompson's hand. A lot of people are pointing out after you won the championship as you lose a lot of respect for Sabonis. But he's also saying, and I think you guys have noticed this, right? Draymond Green, I suppose LeBron deserves it, right? He's entering locker rooms these days where his teammates are making goat sounds on his behalf. But Draymond Green has been more effusive in his praise of LeBron than I think anyone speaking into microphones. And what he said most recently is that after he plays against LeBron, he doesn't shower. Because when you play that kind of greatness, you want the smell still on you.
It's a little strange. I mean, does he mean that literally?
Yes. I mean,
he literally does not shower after he plays LeBron.
He's saying he never showers after playing LeBron James because he wants, when you play against that beyond epic, historic greatness, you want the scent still on you.
Oh, wow. The scent of losing? The scent of having your ass.
This is the new and unimproved Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz. Gamble on by DraftKings.
Stugotz sprung on everybody yesterday that he wouldn't be around for a week. He says that he got in Chris Whittingham's schedule book when he was off. Nobody here believes him. Let's try and get a hold of Whittingham and see if he can tell us that this is indeed a lie. Billy, who produces God Bless Football. How difficult is this, Billy, in terms of your schedule, stupidity? Is he planning on doing things from wherever he is? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, great.
We recorded something yesterday, but it wasn't long enough for a full episode. I do hear from him like 8 times a day, though. So, like, he will call me. And if I don't get it, he'll call me right back. And if I don't get that, then he'll text me, hey, call me when you get a second. And then he'll leave me a voicemail that says, hey, call me back. None of it ever actually gives me any information. So I eventually call him back, and then we'll talk for like 40 minutes. And then at the end of it, it'll be like, so are we recording anything today or not? So hopefully today I'll have an answer as to whether or not. Because last I heard he was going to do something with Chris, Cote, and Goldie. I don't know if Chris Cote was aware of that or not.
That was supposed to be yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
Do you, and maybe you can help me here, as any of you can help me here, as astute observers of this crazed creature, do you guys understand why he does the thing the night before of, hey, TBA on tomorrow, I might be there, when you know he's made the decision? The decision has been made. It's not in any way true. Is it because he wants to control it? Does he want to have that control over us? We could do the show whether he's here or not.
I'm not sure what it is. For me, I know once he throws out there that he might not be here today, he's not going to be here today, but I still want to see if he's going to be a professional about it and respond to me when I say, hey, are you coming in tomorrow? And he does the unprofessional thing of not letting me know until 6:45 when he's already in New York.
The dedication to unprofessionalism is breathtaking. Like, I just don't understand why.
He kind of gets off on it. It's needless. Like, we're covered. We had David Sampson here until Dan jettisoned him away. Yeah. Who knows what the status of that is?
I did that for the audience, and you guys jettisoned him away.
I had nothing to do with it, Dan. You gave him a show misconduct.
No, you guys allowed him to talk too much. And,
that's not what happened.
And yesterday too much.
Well, he's a co-host, and
he was hired.
This is part of the deal with hiring him, and I'm grateful for it. And it's not like we didn't celebrate the local hour. Those comments aren't because David Sampson talked more than usual. It was just because he merely existed, and people don't like him.
I love David Sampson, but how can he, of all people, be so thin-skinned? He spent his career as the president of the Miami Marlins, inviting the slings and arrows from angry fans. How can he be so thin-skinned at criticism from listeners?
Well, it's not like it's new criticism. It's not being fair.
Like, I'm at the studio today. I'm like, oh, okay.
That part is weird because I've noticed that because I think we kind of agreed, hey, you got a lot going on. You're working very hard, especially during the football season with God Bless Football. Take Thursdays to dedicate yourself.
Witty. Not to throw Witty under the bus, but he's not here, so it doesn't matter.
That's not true. Also, I reached out to Witty, but he is presently really enjoying life away from this show. He's on a yacht.
What? A yacht? What?
It is a strangely tortured experience, I think, to be careening around in Stugotz's head. And I really do think, I want to analyze this with you guys for a second. I think he simply wants to have the control of it. And I think he notices, as all of you have, there are an awful lot of people here, and we're all replaceable. I purposely put David Sampson in the seat so you'll miss me. It's a strategic device. You usually hate me. I found the one creature anywhere in sports that I can put in this seat that you will hate more, so that when I come back, I do so to a heroic return and welcome.
Heady play, Dano.
Thank you. But I also believe, because it's not just that, because he's also somebody who is just simply conflicted. So you tell him to take Thursday off, and he wants to decide when he's off. The part that's strange to me is not telling anybody when he knows. He's made his flights. Like, he's not making his flights this morning to New York.
He does sometimes do that, though. He does sometimes just make his flights on a whim, which is, I don't know how anyone can operate this way, but we've emboldened him. He has it pretty good here. He can just do this, and everyone just chalks it up to the cost of doing business with Stugotz. But, you know, there was like kind of like a feeling out process when Woody was EP, and you could see where he was trying to find where the lines were.
No, it was fascinating to see him try and create new boundaries and push Woody. This is why I want to talk to Woody. Will he join us from this yacht at some point during the show?
He says connection spotty, but when someone says that they're on a yacht and they're not on your show, and you're presently having, you know, a less than stellar day, you just become filled with envy, and you realize, you go enjoy that yacht. You're in a far better place.
He has. I don't think that he's ever had because you can imagine how organized Chris Whittingham is, that he's ever had a larger frustration than what it is to just generally deal with Stugotz's tapestry of lies.
We've never talked about on the air where I thought where if I could pinpoint a specific time where I thought Woody was going to leave us. And it was the day it was announced that he was going to Apple. And Stugotz was being maximum Stugotz that day, and we had all sorts of problems with our recording. There was all sorts of bad communication between here and Arizona. And I looked at Chris Whittingham, and I could see wash across his face the dichotomy of crowning achievement, dream job, universal praise on Twitter, and having to deal with Stugotz. And I once again see that dichotomy between him living his best life right now, enjoying life on a boat, and the show that he used to work on, asking him to relive Stugotz's lies. I don't want to put him through that. Let's not have Woody on today.
You say that about Chris Whittingham. I want you to imagine John Skipper, who was the most powerful man in sports, dealing with all things Stugotz, and I can't imagine how good Stugotz's seats are tonight at Madison Square Garden because he went to the top of the food chain to bum tickets and take the day off from work.
See, if you want to talk about where the failings are, I start right at the top. We emboldened this man by giving him your sweet tickets, Skip.
You are criticizing the CEO of the company
publicly? Left me in a foxhole over here taking grenades with Dan taking his frustrations out on our newest signing, David Sampson. This could have been avoided by not giving Stugotz the tickets.
Let's be clear on this. My frustrations with Sampson have nothing to do with Stugotz and everything to do with him defecating on what I've spent 18 years building in this market. It's that's all it is. And
he didn't do anything. He was just David Sampson yesterday. Like, that's the thing. He didn't come in saying I'm gonna be like an asshole. He's just David. I'm not saying he's an asshole. I'm just saying he just came in and was David Sampson. Like, that's all he did yesterday.
Yeah, it wasn't super egregious. And trust me, I'll be the first person to raise my hand when I feel like he's being out of line. But he was just merely existing yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of merely existing, Billy, can you tell us what it is that's happening with Antonio Brown?
I have no idea what's going on with him.
That is a loaded question.
Yeah, what am I supposed to tell you? Am I his therapist?
How much time he got?
Wow.
So did you see what he did? I don't know if the internet was working, or like if you were driving or there was a river. What was going on at this moment in the NFL draft? At one point in time, Antonio Brown just tweets out a picture of him in Ravens gear, and he's like, I'm coming back to football next year. And then, as you know, most people probably did, I start searching to see if anyone is reporting this but Antonio Brown. And no, it was just him. He just, I guess, decided he's on the Ravens. And I kind of wonder if he thinks that he's on the Ravens, if he's going to show up to OTAs. Like, what happened there? How did he just decide he was on the Ravens next year?
Can he do that? Can he just walk in and be like, all right, guys, I'm here. Let's go?
No.
It would kind of go the way that it went for Kanye when he showed up to Skechers headquarters after losing the Adidas deal. No, get out of here. You don't have an appointment.
Security.
Well, if he just showed up and started playing for the Ravens and he's not under contract, right? And you get Antonio Brown, obviously the bad comes with all the good. Would you take him? He's just playing for free on your team. You're not paying him anything.
The not under contract is not a way that people are allowed to play in the NFL.
So basically, he was Willie Mays Hayes on Major League. He just showed up.
He didn't show up. I think he just photoshopped.
Yeah, he just photoshopped himself on a
Did he?
in a uniform.
That's brilliant.
But I don't know.
That's all he did.
That is not brilliant.
It's brilliant.
It is pretty good. It made me look.
We established the brilliance bar as Ryan Cortez crane calling the sports hub in Boston. I think it's right there.
It's epic, though.
You guys have really lowered.
What's more brilliant?
You guys have lowered the standard for brilliance has just been lowered by this show. Is it Ryan Cortez? Do you guys not recognize what?
You got the part where he said he was
is?
from Boston to get past the screener, right?
First time, long time.
First time, long time was a nice little. Yes.
Those poor people. That was probably like a 7:30, 8 o'clock shift where it's like, let's just get to tomorrow. You know what I mean? You take some calls. And there he is, just being a scoundrel.
No, it's about 11 p.m. It's the worst shift.
11 p.m.
So
is when he did that. That's mean.
It was after the Celtics Sixers game, 10, 11 p.m. And whoever's call screening at that point at a sports radio station, like that's not a great job.
He sent into the chat that he waited on hold for 35 minutes to do that at 11 o'clock at night.
They hadn't even lost the game yet.
I'll hold.
You're starting to come around. Pretty brilliant.
No,
pretty brilliant.
Closer to pathetic than brilliant.
Very single. We established that.
And will remain thus.
That's not nice.
Put it on the poll at Le Batard Show. Will Parakeet Cortez remain single? many people are thrilled at the return of the hard net workout. Mike Ryan thinks I am using it too much, but we have segments now that we are practicing as part of our new network schedule, or we're trying to stick to 12 and a half minutes per segment. We've told Cote he was locked in the first 2 segments on the clock, but he has since said, he has just now said, because every segment keeps ending with him despondent, he has said, you will not get me again. That is the last
means
time.
Nothing.
That is the last time you guys will get me today. Mike Ryan thinks we should put it at the end of the hour, not at the end of every single segment. He thinks we're getting carried away. I think we're making up for lost time. It is one of the few things I miss about ESPN's clock and management in general was the fact that we could do that to Greg Cote. I am thrilled to have it back. I need to find a way to get the club back. Those are like the only 2 things that I miss from our time at ESPN.
And the free Disney passes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you could get those
Can
back.
we get
Those
that?
are super important.
That
you
was
provide
great.
that for us, Dan?
I had those when I didn't have a kid. Now what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. You got to pay for it now.
Last night at the Met Gala, Dwyane Wade, I admired Dwyane Wade for a million different reasons, okay? It's a long, long list of reasons. Going back to his first days in Miami when the custodians at the arena would shake his hand and beg him not to change, as it was clear he was becoming a superstar, and he didn't do much in the way of changing on how it is that he treated people, how he publicly talks about his wife and following her and following love because he finds her wiser and stronger than he is, and as a face and body for masculinity, the way that he talks about love of family, love of his wife, and love of his daughter. I don't know if many of you can imagine appreciating and understanding and being in awe of your child so much at 12 years old that when Zaya tells you that she is transgender in 2020 at 12 years old, that you would support that decision privately, publicly, that you would not be influenced or infected by the masculinity that you can find in the average locker room or in the culture of sports, in the pipeline of sports, that you would be so strong as to let your love of your child arrive in a place of such acceptance and understanding that you support who your child believes as a storm gathers around your child in this state in particular that makes it unpleasant, and in some cases a poison that is lethal, because this must be a special kind of torment to be, I know many of you disagree with the idea of gender being on a spectrum, and you can argue with me about the science of chromosomes, but for a child to have the loneliness of not just whatever that confusion and difficulty must be at that age, and turn to her parents and find nothing but support, I don't know that there is something stronger a parent can give a child than that kind of buoying, that kind of confidence at what could be a difficult time, even if it wasn't in a community that has 6 times higher suicide rate, because this must be such a lonely torment to not just try to figure it out for yourself, but to have society or large swaths of society feel okay with condemning everything you are. And if you're in our audience and you're saying a 12-year-old cannot make those decisions for a parent, you're entitled to that opinion, but it is not supportive, it is not allyship, and it is not what Dwyane Wade has been doing publicly since Zaya made the revelation to the family and everyone else that she was an adult and that she was going to choose this path. So here are the words of Dwyane Wade at the Met Gala, and he has now said...
This is several days after he made news, Dan.
This bummed me out, that he moved out of Florida because it doesn't feel safe. And how could it? How could Florida... Now, man, I don't know. I talk a lot here about not getting numb to what is happening with guns and gun violence, and I'm sure most of you reacted the same way to the news from Texas, where a guy is shooting an automatic weapon next door. They tell him to quiet down because there's a baby sleeping, and then the next thing you know, he's just opening fire on a house, and mothers are killed and found dead on their surviving children because of what the parental urge is to make sure that your child's life is more important than your own. We've got a gun problem in America. We've got a permitless carry problem in Florida. And on top of that, now government legislation that makes it so that Dwyane Wade probably feels unsafe for his child in Florida. And so here's Dwyane Wade in his own words explaining to you why it is that Heat lifer Dwyane Wade, he was at the first game with Jimmy Butler. He asked for his autograph afterward. He is proud to be a member of the Miami Heat, but he has moved to California with his wife because of how unsafe it feels, specifically, he is saying, for Zaya. So let's hear that sound.
What's your message to Ron DeSantis?
I don't know him. But I do know men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. I do know that when our children feel accepted, that 43% of our children that feels accepted from their parents, from the world, it lowers the death rate. Suicide is high in the trans community. It's high in youth. And so I'm going to step on the side of acceptance, and I'm not going to even go on the other side. I'm just focused on acceptance. And so let's make sure our kids have an opportunity to live this life that we all get to live. And it starts with our gun safety laws, obviously. We have a lot of work to do there in our schools, but also, too, in our community, which is the trans community.
That is courtesy of Variety, and I really don't know how to explain to you how difficult and isolated and lonely the experience must be to transition as the country or swaths of the country become more and more empowered to file their hatred or their lack of acceptance and tolerance under the idea that these people are freaks and making science arguments as if a suicide rate of that sort was meant to win swimming competitions in Philadelphia. Make it about whether or not the trans community should be allowed to compete in women's sports and make the argument about that instead of, I would imagine, a humanity that could reach all of us. The solution is to kill yourself because of the pain you're in. The solution. I don't know how many of you have felt that kind of despair before, where the pain was so large, the loneliness was so large that you solve it by the only way you know how to end it, which is to end your life.
And it's not just the suicide rates when you look at the trans community, particularly amongst black women. It's the murder rate. Black trans women are murdered at a disproportionate rate from everybody else in our society. If you look at the number of trans people murdered in the U.S. between 2017 and 2021, it doubled. That does have to do with the rhetoric of politicians and specific politicians, laws, including here, putting these people at risk. Of those total victims, 73% were killed with a gun. And specifically, while only 13% of the transgender community is estimated to be black trans women account for nearly 3/4 of the known victims of trans murders.
LGBTQ community is under siege from so many different angles, including lawmakers. And when Dwyane Wade stands up and refers to the trans community as our community from the most personal place possible, he is figuratively and literally a champion of a people who need representation who needs somebody to speak out on the injustice of discriminating against trans people. And that Dwyane Wade is doing it, I think is beyond admirable. I think his post-career life has been stellar because of this. Trayvon Martin, he led the fight to bring awareness to that. And now for his own family, for our community, him referring to trans community as our community, I think is huge to a lot of people nationwide.
That's the part that's so impressive, right? Is the embracing of not just his daughter, but the entire community and representing them. To put yourself in the position to put that target on your back, right? Dwyane Wade stands for something very specific in masculinity, in this sort of world that we've created around sports, and yet he's out here. You mentioned, Greg, Trayvon Martin. You can talk about what his reaction was. He was traded back to Miami right before the Stoneman Douglas shooting, and then was a huge part of going into that community and lifting them up and campaigning against gun violence. And now what he's doing in this community is nothing short of exceptional. And as someone who grew up watching Dwyane Wade, he was my hero because of who he was on the court. And in a lot of ways, I look up to him far more now as the human being that he's become off the court than anything he did on the court.
I understand how many people are confused by all of this. You're allowed to be confused by it. I prefer equality for all. Perhaps you don't. I'm not saying that I'm better than you in preferring equality for all, but I prefer equality for all. But that's not even the ask here. The ask isn't even equality. The ask is merely tolerance. It's merely, can you tolerate this? And the answer is no, I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to shoot you with a gun, or I'm going to make it so miserable that you shoot yourself because I'm going to make it that unpleasant around you. That's not hate in disguise. That's hate out in the open when the request is, it's such a small one. It's just, can you tolerate this? I mean, tolerance is such a diluted, weak word. Can you abide it? Can you simply, and then the argument, no, chromosome science. No, I got to protect my Philadelphia swim meet. No. And it's you can't be strong enough to just tolerate it. listening to this and elsewhere, going to work every day and spending 8 hours or more doing something they hate. Not like a little bit, do a job, dedicate your life to a pursuit that is not enjoyable. You've also heard me say that I've had successful professionals, and it happens all the time. Doctors, lawyers, architects ask me, how do I do what you do? How do I get to talk about sports and fool around? I have found the one man, I believe, anywhere in South Florida who is a sports fan who is not happy with what's happening right now in South Florida sports. He's sitting next to me. He feels like he's working too much. He's saying he is tired. You could check
telling everyone that he's working too much.
You could check out his podcast where he laments these things, the Greg Cote Show featuring Greg Cote.
With
wherever it is that you find your podcast. He's a sports writer. He's been a sports writer for 40 years. This seems like a pretty good time to be a sports writer.
Yeah, but in Greg's defense, I mean, the people that were here and were cheering on, like, you don't see the Heat playing the game and then going to cover the Panthers game. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see the Panthers playing and then going over the Quesana, whatever arena over here across the street and then going to cover a Marlins. Greg's around town. He's covering all the sports, basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer. He's covering it all, Dan.
Right. On Sunday, he wrote 2 columns off of both those games. Like, good cheers to him. And then in about 9 p.m., we got on to do the Greg Cote Show podcast. So he's doing 2 columns and recording his podcast, and I could see how
it's a lot.
I could see how unhappy he was, and the reason
until very late.
He wasn't able to get into the Miller Lights until after all that. And I was impressed because honestly, I was expecting him to have gotten into it even with the work, but I was impressed he didn't. I was like, you seem you're alive right now, and he's just like, check back in an hour.
And I was energized. I'm energized by these twin playoff runs. But you can't call me the world's biggest homer and say I don't like what's going on right now. I love what's going on right now. I love to cover and write about big playoff runs. But at the same time, it is physically grueling for me. Mm-hmm. I'm an old guy. It's a lot for me to, work 2 or 3 nights a week covering, writing off deadline games, and it's physically exhausting.
How easy would this week have been if the Panthers had lost? Huh?
I did mention that to my wife. I said, I'm conflicted. I don't quite know how to feel because my next couple of weeks would be much easier if the Panthers lost. Having said that, I'm glad they won. I'm glad the Heat are still alive. I am.
He is.
I am genuine. There is part of me that's a homer. Mm-hmm. I like writing about things that people want to read. I like writing about things that fans care about and that the community cares about.
What were you rooting for at the end of Game 7? When how did you feel with 70 seconds left in that Bruins-Panthers game?
Well,
they were down.
I assumed they had lost at that point.
But how did you feel? How did you feel? Because you knew, you did the calculations on this, and look, there's no one that I know in my life who does all calculations on how does this affect me more than you.
Okay, thank you.
And so I'm assuming that you're watching what could be a historic game for the Panthers, and you're trying to figure out how does this affect me, and that you're secretly rooting against the Panthers.
No, I am not thinking macro like that at that point. I'm thinking micro, and the micro is...
Damn it, my column was written. Now I have to rewrite it.
Yes, exactly right. And you know that. I mean... I don't know if people realize that when there's nothing worse than a tie game late in a hockey game in terms of writing on deadline. And then when one team goes ahead, all right, you got to start writing this team won. When it's tied again, you're screaming, not because of the result, but because of the effect on your column and your night ahead. And so I was thinking selfishly then, I just want somebody to win this game. I want somebody with a 2-goal lead so I can write this thing.
How'd you feel Game 6 when it was back and forth?
Oh, it's insane. Game 6 was the single greatest hockey game I've ever seen live.
But you hated it because it screwed up your column.
It was difficult to write, but it was after the fact, it's exhilarating. This, for me, from a personal standpoint, a professional standpoint, this playoff run by both teams concurrently has been exhilarating and exhausting at the same time.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. We appreciate your hard work.
Thank you, Greg.
Rather muted, half-hearted thank you, Greg. But that's all right. You meant well.
I have an idea. Dan, why don't you lift some of the burden from Greg? Why don't you take one of the teams for him and just write the article and we publish it under Greg's name?
You know what? Hey, I like that.
Greg's been doing the show for free for years, Dan. It's the least you can
That's
do.
Not bad.
Just take on a team. Yeah.
Okay. Write a column off tonight's 2 games.
There you go.
The moment I did that and they ran his column inside and put my column on the front page, he would be so pissed off. Every time. This has happened like...
it's not your name. It's going to be under Greg Cody's name. You're just doing a friend a favor,
so you want me to commit a journalistic crime.
Oh, please, come on.
No crime on my behalf.
There's no
Nom de plume is
journalist
Greg
here
Cody.
anymore. Come on.
Several great writers have used a nom de plume.
Exactly.
Please
right.
give Dan the heat beat because I know exactly how that Panthers article is going to start. It was 1996 in a muggy Miami arena when Scott Mellenby took a hockey stick.
Right.
It would be so much better than that. I don't understand why that voice was that way. I'm confused.
Who was that supposed to be?
Was it supposed to be eloquent? Because it didn't feel eloquent to me. It just you didn't have anything after
whack. Who went the hockey stick?
Here's another line from that column: "Ice, the color of clouds."
Mm-hmm. Ever heard of George Orwell? Nom de plume.
Ice, the color of clouds. Yes! Brings back memories, doesn't it? What did you say? Base is the color of clouds? I think that was one of your Marlins columns. I keep track. Ice, the color of clouds. All right.
Shockular! One Brian Scrutland then turned to his left.
You do it.
I don't know what I'm doing.
What kind of accent is that?
Gord Murphy poked his head out from a curtain. I think I'm kind of making you Frank DeFord a little bit. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And Billy and Lindsay with a miraculous goal.
Johan Garpenlove wrapped around the pillar.
That is such a great call.
Right Jason Woolley went woo. Not since then. Has a team captured the excitement of this market.
I did not think someone could go more inside than Greg Cody referencing columns that I wrote 25 years ago about baseball bases the color of clouds.
Yes.
But you went Frank DeFord's NPR accent voice as a literary sports writer, and I don't believe our audience has any idea what you're
Who shall
doing.
smite this rat? Is it you, Paul Laws? No. It shall be I, Scott Mellenby.
Now you're doing Shakespeare. All right. Weirdly,
John Buccigross is there on the phone.
John Buccigross is there on the phone, not by video. He works in a video medium. Buccigross, could you not get to a Zoom? What are you doing? Driving around?
They didn't offer the Zoom.
You're on a
I
Zoom.
would Zoom if you want to Zoom.
You're on a Zoom right now. You're the only guy that calls the Zoom.
All right, we're gonna break.
I
and
know.
come back.
That's what. I'm as coachable as Robert Spala was back in the day.
Robert Spala, the former All-Star.
I'm coming back.
Partners on that blue line with Gord Murphy.
I want the video of this, and I'm not doing 2 minutes with John Buccigross. So let's break here, and we'll come back with John Buccigross on the Zoom. I also want to get to some George Foreman, some sound about George Foreman.
Oof, big George Foreman.
Why did you say it like that?
Because, Daniel, you're going to figure out why.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. But one of my favorite, I've got 2 favorite George Foreman stories. One was Ali, what he would do to the heavy bag before Ali went into the gym, back when George Foreman was a man who was the most feared man in the world. He was Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson, and he wandered around with a pet tiger on a leash. And what he would do
also before Mike Tyson.
Yeah, well, Tyson didn't do it on a
no
leash.
It was just a free-roaming tiger.
George Foreman would leave. I didn't know this could be done to heavy bags, but in order to intimidate Ali, who didn't have the punching power of Foreman, he would hit the heavy bag and leave an enormous dent in the heavy bag for Ali to use it. And the trick that he had in Zaire was he was doing rope-a-dope until Foreman would get tired in the heat. And Foreman retells the story of just Ali for rounds, just leaning against the ropes and Foreman hitting him again and again and again and again. And Ali just kept repeating every time, "Is that all you got, George?" Like whispering as the chants are going in Zaire, "Ali Boombaye, Ali Boombaye." And he's just whispering to him, "Is that all you got, George? Is that all you got?" And then in the 8th round, George admits, "Yeah, pretty much." Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I got.
I've been throwing haymakers for 8 rounds. That's it.
I'm tired. You keep doing this thing where you're just laying against the ropes. I'm 250 pounds. I'm tired. I'm delirious. I think he found God in the locker room. I may be conflating fights, but I think he was so dehydrated after the fight that he found God after the fight and then named 9 of his sons George.
You'll see some of those sons in this video because I guess this is part of the promotional push for Big George Foreman, the upcoming movie. And this went kind of viral. Let's play George Foreman at his age right now hitting the heavy bag.
You still got that power, Dan? Power doesn't age. Are you ready? Yeah. Let me see what you got, Jack. Show me what you got, George. Let's go, Jack. Let's go. I'm ready for a comeback again.
I mean, Tyson, you've seen Tyson in his 50s box, right? You guys have seen him spar. It's
one of the most
terrifying.
incredible things you've ever seen. Him with his coach, like doing all the combinations is insane. Because you hear the sound of the popping mitts. It's crazy.
This has Michael Vick throwing a football out of a stadium vibes.
Oh, my God.
George Foreman is 74. Did you see the definition on that dude?
No.
When the hoodie was on, did you see the definition on those lats?
You
Come
guys,
on.
You guys think
it's fake.
You guys think that is sound? You think that is
Yeah,
just...
I think it's a different boxer with a hoodie on, and they cut away. It's fake.
That's crazy.
Fake!
Plus, there's like weird shots where
Fake!
3 Stanley Cup playoffs presented by a sponsor I don't have to name. Second round begins Tuesday with ESPN doubleheader featuring Panthers and Maple Leafs, Kraken and Stars. Bucci Grass is the voice and face of all of this stuff. Good talking to you, John. Thank you for being on with us. We'll get to the Bucci overtime challenge in a second. What are you shaking your head about? You're very proud of the Bucci overtime challenge, are you not?
No, it's a big goof thing that happened out of nowhere. It's kind of it always makes me chuckle when I look at trending topics on Twitter. And number one is, what did Rihanna wear to the Met Gala? Bucci overtime challenges 2, and Snoop Dogg's favorite ham sandwich. It's like right in the middle of all these pop cultural icons. It's this silly little Twitter game involving the Stanley Cup playoffs. So
you're not proud of it? Explain it to the audience.
It was just a whim one day. Back in the day at ESPN, a game would go to overtime. The first time we had hockey on NHL Tonight, we'd throw $1 on the set, me, Ferraro, and Melrose, pick a guy on each team to score the winning goal, because our show would immediately follow the overtime playoff game at 2 in the morning on ESPN2. And then if your guy scored, you pick up the $2, we start the show. If nobody guy scored, you put the $1 back in your pocket, start the show. So I just threw it on Twitter one day as a whim with this extremely literal clunky hashtag, Bucci overtime challenge. If I had a focus group, we probably would have come up with something shorter, but I think that's part of the charm of it. It's just a silly little goofy thing that happened out of nowhere. And I probably sold about $1 million worth of t-shirts and hats and given away about $250,000. So it's all, to me, it's just funny how it just kind of started out of nowhere.
Why are you making faces, Billy?
You made $1 million on a joke?
Pretty much, yeah. Between the Bucci overtime challenge and hashtag college hockey, selling hats and T-shirts from my attic and my basement, all by myself. I go to the post office just about every day. Me and my bin of hats and T-shirts, drop them off. I package them myself. I do the people email me, hey, I got the wrong size. Can you get me a large or a medium? And I go, okay, is this Bucci? Yeah, who else would it be? It's, this is my thing. This is kind of my day job. I have a night job. I got nothing to do during the day, so it fills the day.
Has it become a pain in the ass, like to have to go to the mailbox all the time, or to go to the post office?
That's not too. It's kind of been the circle of my day. I get up, I go to the post office, I go to the gym, I go to the supermarket, and I come home. I usually buy to eat. That's what I usually buy the food that I eat that day. Maybe 2 days out, but that's pretty much it. So it's kind of, I have a lap, and it's a good routine. It's not that big of a deal. Now, yesterday I had 37 of them, to bring to the post office, and this thing right here. So, I'm going to the post office with this thing because, we have 6 overtimes in the last week, and I'm at work, so I can't do it when I'm there. So they build up. So I'm here all day, packaging 60 to 70 to 100 T-shirts because, I get behind. I'm on the road, or I'm in Connecticut. I'm in Plymouth, Massachusetts right now. This is where I usually am.
Do you root for games to not go into overtime, all of them? So that
Yes. Yes, I do, Dan. Yes, I do. When the Bruins had their goal, when the Panthers had their goalie pulled, I go, please, no. This is more postage for me. This is more taking this broken bin to the post office. I hate them.
What do you spend in postage a year?
Well, it costs about, postage is expensive. You know what's expensive also? I went to buy some deodorant the other day. It's like $9 for a stick of Old Spice now.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. Toothpaste too. It's like $9. Well, now it costs me $4 to mail a T-shirt. So you figure we've had I think 14 overtimes. I'm doing 5 winners now. I used to do 10. I'm down to 5. So that's that's 60 times. That's $250 so far. Not that bad. That's just for the playoffs. So it's only during the playoffs too. I do this. I don't do it during the regular season. It doesn't work 3-on-3, 5-minute shootout stuff. So it really is built for the postseason.
Have you seen the price of eggs, John? I mean, it's getting crazy out there.
See that eggs, but I do it. I have 4 eggs every day. And if you do the math, it's like 60 cents. It's like it, $9. I get 18 for $8. I get 18 for $9. So yeah. So what is that? It's like 40 cents an egg. It's like 30 cents an egg. It's actually less than that. So to me, eggs not a big deal when you break it down. Each breakfast. Breakfast is the cheapest meal. I don't know how Denny's makes money, but breakfast is the cheapest meal to eat.
What are you most appalled by when it comes to inflation? Is it deodorant or is it something else?
It's deodorant, I think. I think it's the $9 for a stick of Old Spice. It used to be $1.99, right? This just happened.
I did not have you. I don't know what I'm doing here. I did not have you as a tattoo guy. What do you got? You got any stories on the tattoos there?
I got a lot. They're addicting. So
you could just take the shirt off.
And I get one a year. So that's my thing. I like to think about what I'm going to get, and then I kind of, I ponder it. I'm a long-term thinker. I like to kind of, think about things and where, what, and then I do it, and then it's over. So this kid's like my kid's handwriting from their, hey, happy Father's Day, Dad, from 1999. So I got that. This is going to be my. I'm going to start putting like social security numbers and birthdays and girlfriends. This will be my dementia cheat sheet. That's what I call it. When I start to, when I lose it, I'll have a little cheat sheet here in my arm.
I'm surprised, given how jacked you are, and the fact that you eat those 4 eggs a day.
Not jacked
because you want the protein.
Please.
I am surprised that you didn't take him up on his invitation to take your shirt off.
I'm not jacked. I'm overrated for my jack.
Come on, we see the neck vein.
Seriously,
Iron Temple.
We'll be the judge of that.
No, I am not. I am maybe I'm. They're skinny fat. I'm skinny jacked.
Can you put in perspective for us? Can you give us with hockey history in your corner? What does it mean in terms of upsets that the Panthers did that to the Bruins?
Statistically, it's an upset, of course. 43-point difference, but. Like, I kind of look at things this way. Like, if we were going to put the Panthers and Bruins in my broken mailing bin right here, put all the players in this bin.
His biceps.
And we had a draft, right? Who would be the first player taken in that draft? Just from those two teams, right? Man. It would probably be
Pastrnak
or Tkachuk. Yeah, so I'll give you David Pastrnak. But then Matthew Tkachuk would go 2, right? Who goes 3? Probably Barkov, right?
Man, he's been so bad.
I like this game he's playing.
I'd probably go Montour.
Probably go Montour now.
Very strange. Yeah, then you'd go McAvoy before the series. After the series you'd go Montour, but before the series then it'd be McAvoy. But then it's like people don't realize how good Gustav Forsling is. He'd be like the second best Bruins defenseman. Obviously Montour's had a great year. He's had certainly a top 2, top 3 guy. So if you just look at the roster and you go down, it's like. I don't know how the Bruins did it. It was like the biggest statistical mirage of all time that they did what they did with that team.
Are you thinking to yourself that the Panthers caught a break because they don't have to see the Lightning?
Probably. That might be a mini break. Yeah, I think they're exhausted. They played so much hockey the last 3-4 years. They were ripe. Familiar opponent, which makes it tough to beat the same person over and over again in any sport, any endeavor. So the Maple Leafs, they might have looked at playing the Lightning again as a bad break for them, but maybe it was a good break. They were familiar with them and they could make their tweaks. I mean, the whole trade deadline for Toronto was beating Tampa Bay because they knew they were going to play them in November. Like that matchup was set because the Bruins were so far in front of the second place team. And there was no one threatening Tampa and Toronto. So you knew that matchup was set. So they could formulate their entire team for that one series. Now we'll see if it works against the Panthers and moving down the line, either the Hurricanes or the Devils. But so in that way, they were looking towards Tampa. So now for the Panthers, this is another interesting series. Again, we could do that draft theory again. I don't know if the Panthers would trade their defenseman. Their defensive core for Toronto's defensive core. I don't think they would. They'd probably they'd trade their forwards, of course, but
trade Ekblad.
They wouldn't trade. They wouldn't trade their D.
This is a matchup of the 2 best American hockey players, yes, and Austin Matthews and Matthew Tkachuk, certainly on form right now.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Tkachuk. We need to get the Keith Tkachuk to produce more hockey players. Him and Chantel need to start making babies immediately. They should think about future Olympic teams. They need to have 15 more kids.
Put it on the poll. Put it on the poll, Juju, please. Do the Tkachuks have to have 15 more kids, please?
Yes, Keith and Chantel. Their daughter's an All-American field hockey player at Virginia. She's like getting a full ride to Virginia. Keith Tkachuk made $100 million in his career. His daughter gets a full ride to Virginia. His boys both make $9 million a year. I mean, talk about a guy who's just loving life. Keith Kachuk. And my goodness, Matthew signs with the Panthers. Dad's knocking at the door every weekend. Hey, I'm here. Open up, Matthew. Dad's back.
Alex Lyon was the first goaltender off the ice in today's practice. You think it's a good idea that the Panthers go with Alex Lyon tonight?
I think you need two goaltenders in this day and age. I think it's a good way to start. You kind of reset. Same thing as last series. See how it goes. But you don't want Bob's camp. You know, if you're going to run this for 2 months, which it takes to win a Stanley Cup Finals, you can't have the same guy, especially someone at his age. It's just, you know, the game is too fast now, too stressful for these goalies. There's no rocking chair, you know, games anymore like back in the day, back in the the first iteration of the Panthers, pre-lockout, when you could just kind of make 19 save shutouts like Marty Brodeur. You know, you could be eating a burrito and smoking a stogie and make blocker saves, and the Devils would win 3-1 and another Stanley Cup. But so yeah, you need two goalies. So why not start on the road, give Bob a break to observe, take it all in, look at these crazy Canadians. This is life or death for them, and start with the guy who went to Yale.
Have you ever seen a more overwhelming power play unit than what Draisaitl and Connor McDavid have put together in Edmonton?
Nope. It's the best ever. I mean, let's face it, 34%. It's like, it is unbelievable. I mean, Connor McDavid is he's obviously the center of it all. He makes everything work. But it's just a perfect collection of a power play now with the point guy, Evan Bouchard, who's a threat. They're calling him the Brendan Montour of the Edmonton Oilers now. You know, he's a lot like him, right-handed shot, and Zach Hyman around the net. So it's just a perfect power play, and it starts obviously with McDavid, but it does. The 5-man unit is the most dangerous in the game right now.
Do you have an explanation for us why road teams are 31-19 in the NHL playoffs? Is it just the hockey's weird?
It's always historically, Dan, it's been like 50-50 until you get to Game 7. Then it goes up a lot. Again, that's historically. I think now these kids have been playing big time international games from the time they're 12, and especially once they're 14, 15. You know, the U18, U17, U16 programs in Canada, in the U.S., and around the world. These kids are traveling the world. They're playing in hostile environments at a very young age. It's not high school hockey around the corner or high school sports like we grew up with, playing in front of 52 people. And then you somehow go to a small college, maybe then suddenly you're playing professional sports in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And suddenly you're in the Super Bowl, you know, like in the 70s, where some of these teams that went from high school to little college to then the Super Bowl. And then eventually, obviously, everything's catching up. College sports, obviously, is now professional sports. And high school, and some high schools are professional, Texas football and whatever, and spots in Florida. So the kids younger and younger are getting exposed to this stuff, and they like loud environments. You tell any college kid, I'd rather play it like for these NCAA hockey tournaments. We go to regional sites and sometimes attract 1,200 people. They'd rather go to a North Dakota and play North Dakota in front of 10,000 for their first NCAA tournament game than go to a neutral site in Grand Rapids in front of 800 people. They'll take that other environment every time.
Put it on the poll, please, Juju, at Le Batard Show. Would Brodeur have shut you out eating a burrito and smoking a stogie? Thank you, Bucci. Good talking to you, sir.
Peace be with you.
Dylan Brooks of the Memphis Grizzlies is an unrestricted free agent, and you do not see this kind of report very often. It will not surprise you, and you will almost totally understand what Shams is reporting about Dylan Brooks as he becomes an unrestricted free agent, as the loudmouth fool/clown who said he didn't respect LeBron James and is just generally a big mouth who doesn't quite back it up with exceptional basketball play. Shams is reporting the Memphis Grizzlies have informed pending free agent Dylan Brooks that he will not be brought back under any circumstances.
Wow.
Under any circumstances. You spent the postseason embarrassing us. We
What if he's free? What a league minimum.
The AB deal.
No.
What team
just shows up? Hey, I'm here.
What team can bring him in? Like, what playoff team wants to add that? It might be tough for him. His agent's gonna have to do some work.
I've just never seen a report that
Give yourself months and the Heat will talk themselves into, oh, we're going to land a whale. We're whale hunting again. Dylan Brooks is agreeing to sign with the
Good
Heat.
defender.
I wanted to talk to Mike Shore. Thank you for making the time, Mike. We'll get to your stat of the day in a second. I thought the writer's strike was going to knock you out from appearing on this show. Not your work on the writer's strike, but that you would be striking all forms of work. It's good that we can still have you interning here at Meadowlark. Can you take us through, because I think people might forget how bad the content got when you eliminate the writers. It's they're kind of important. So to the degree you can, because you've been at the forefront of some of this stuff and you are someone who fights for the right things, tell us what is happening right now that got us to this moment.
Well, it's a long, slow burn. Well, a short, slow burn. The shift to the streaming model created a number of problems for not just writers, but all artists and all people who work on TV shows. Specifically, the amount of steady work has shrunk down and is continuing to shrink. So in the old days, meaning 10 years ago, you would get on a show and you would make 22 episodes of the show, and that took 40 weeks or 42 weeks, and that was your year. The number of episodes crunches down as they shift to streaming. Now it's only 8 episodes. And they've also compartmentalized the process. So, you're doing all the writing. You write for 12 or 16 weeks, and then all the writers are let go. And then all of the shooting happens. And then that whole crew is let go. And then all the editing happens. So as a result, writers are getting these gigs that are like 8, 10, 12 weeks. That might be their whole year. So they used to be employed for 40 weeks on a show, and now it's 8 or 10 or 12. And it's just not... You're not able to build a career that way. You can't make steady, gains in your life, and you can't have stability. So the things that we've been asking for are sort of structural changes in the way that writers are paid for and hired, compensated, and the companies that we negotiate with are not interested in that at all. That's what we learned in this. I'm on the negotiating committee. And they just kind of refuse to engage us in any kind of real discussion about what's happened to writers. There are stories of writers taking second jobs, driving Ubers between gigs. There was a story in the New Yorker the other day about a guy who wrote for the first I think it was the first season of a very successful Handmaid's Tale. I think it's Handmaid's Tale. And between seasons, he was an Uber driver to make more money, to survive, because it wasn't enough employment to keep him going, and that's just not a viable long-term solution for a career.
How are you going to keep showing James Harden drop pick and roll coverage? How do you lose that game? That's a bad loss. It's a bad loss.
I want to be very clear that I'm not interested in talking about the Celtics, the Ice Cats, or any other of whatever garbage you guys have been talking
Your
about.
balls are in a blender. Balls are in a blender.
Oh, God.
Brandon Montour, put your balls in the blender.
I wish the strike did prohibit me from appearing on this show. It would be a relief not to walk into this.
Can you talk to us? Can you explain to us, are you allowed to, about what the primary differences are in the negotiations, or is that a private thing?
No, absolutely. No, it's public now. I mean, it's not one thing. If it is one thing, it's compensation. That's what every union disagreement with management really is about. But You know, the thing is the guild is tough, but we're not unreasonable. Like, we've had one strike in the last 30-something years. And when we do strike, it's not over a number, it's over a concept. Like in 2007, which is the last time the Writers Guild went on strike, so it's 16 years ago, we were saying, hey, you're going to start making shows for the internet, what are now called streaming shows. And we want those shows to be union shows. We want to have coverage of all those shows. And their attitude, I'm not kidding, was, I mean, what even is the internet? We don't know what the internet is. Who knows? It might be nothing. We might never use it. It might be a flash in the pan. And the Guild is really good about seeing the future. And we were like, no, sorry, we don't accept that. We know that you are planning to move shows over to like be watched through your computer over the internet. And we need jurisdiction over the internet, and we went on strike for it. And now 50% of the members of the Writers Guild work for streaming shows and movies. So, like, if we hadn't looked into the future back then, the union would have dissolved. We wouldn't exist right now because half of us would be working with no protection. It's the same thing now. Like, I'll give you one example. The comedy variety shows, you know, late night shows, soap operas, there's a whole bunch of shows that don't fall neatly into any category, right? It's not episodic drama or episodic comedy. Those shows currently still, through a loophole, have no protection, no guild minimums on streaming shows. So we said one of the many things we said was, that's silly. It doesn't matter whether you're making a late night comedy variety show for NBC or Peacock, it should be the same payment structure, the same pension and health contributions, everything else. Their counter proposal was they offered us a day rate, which means they wanted to pay people by the day. So just like, to put this into sports terms, imagine that instead of having a 25-man roster, all baseball players like sat in their houses, and then, you know, they would get a call that said on a Tuesday, it was like, hey, we want you to come pitch the 6th inning today. We'll pay you $200. And they're, oh, great. And they go pitch the 6th inning and get $200. And then the next day they're back at home waiting for another phone call. That's what they were offering for this wide swath of shows that have existed for decades and decades. So, like, this isn't about, you know, they wanted to pay us X and we were asking for Y. This is incredibly fundamental structural stuff about the way that writers are paid and the terms of their employment. And it was like that in episodic TV. It was like that in screenplays. Like, it was in every phase of the business, the stuff they were offering was existentially threatening to the concept of writing.
Do you have any idea how this is going to go, how long it's going to go, and what the customer is about to feel in decline of quality of content?
I have no idea how long it's going to go. I can tell you that the union is incredibly has a lot of resolve right now and is really revved up about this. We took a strike authorization vote as a matter of, procedure, and it was 98% yes, we authorized the strike, because all writers at all levels are feeling the threats that are out there right now. We all see where this is going. I don't know how long it will last. Nobody does. There are other unions, the Directors Guild and SAG also have to negotiate their contracts. As far as the effect it will have, some shows will go down immediately. The late night comedy shows that create a show every day will go dark in all likelihood. Other shows, it will take a while. There will be a lag because it takes a while to make episodes. So there are episodes in the pipeline now that have been completed. There are movies that have been completed that will roll out. You likely won't really feel it as a customer for a couple weeks or a month or two. But at some point, if we remain on strike, the pipeline runs dry. There is no new content. Stuff isn't coming out the way it used to. And the companies know that. They don't want this either. Like, they're digging in their heels because they're under pressure from Wall Street and their stock price has to go up and up and up and all that stuff. And they know full well that eventually, without content, the content pipeline runs dry. So it's just a matter of time until they wise up, I hope. We have told them, like, we are willing to have this conversation anytime you want. Like, if you really want to have a real conversation about what's going on here, we'll get back in the room with you tomorrow. But they have to be serious. They have to make real proposals. You know, we made a proposal on AI, which we see as another existential threat about the future, where we said, like, look, we know you use AI for, analysis and data gathering and everything. We just believe that AI shouldn't ever generate literary material. they wouldn't even have a discussion with us. They just rejected it out of hand. So when they're willing to actually engage in discussions with us about the stuff that's important, we'll be right back in the room, and hopefully they'll come to their senses.
Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is the start of the day.
What I should really do is have a totally stupid stat of the day about Dylan Brooks. But instead, I'll say this. Last year, the companies that the Writers Guild is currently striking had $220 billion of revenue and $30 billion of profit every year from 2017 until 2021. The amount of money they offered the 12,000-member Writers Guild was $86 million.
That is a good stat of the day. I don't believe we should let him off the hook here.
Do you have the Dylan Brooks one? Just out of curiosity. Yeah. Or how about the point difference between the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins?
Yes.
Connor Brahage.
Story.
Yeah, we're having a dialogue.
We're going top shelf where Mrs. Mueller keeps the peanut butter.
A minute away. You were
How do you start swaying?
1 minute away. You were up 3-1.
Almont is injured.
No. That's the excuse after. They told me this was coming on the Sports Hub.
I believe you every time you tell me something about that series. I didn't watch any of it. So
What? You lie.
You know what? On the off chance that you were serious about your Hartford Whalers fandom, I want to be a wrecking ball. I want to take out the Bruins, and then in the Eastern Conference Finals, I want to take out the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Just because they used to be the Hartford Whalers. How do you lose to just James Harden? Losers!
Yes, James Harden. How did James Harden...
Doc Rivers coach circles around Joe.
What happened? I don't understand. Al Horford is supposed to be playoff Al. What happened?
I mean, again, I was in the middle of very intense negotiations between my union and the companies that pay us.
You saw every single one of
you
those 46.
Suffered it.
You
James
know
Harden,
it.
Yes.
Look
Eat
at
it.
me, Louie.
Eat it, sure.
Hey, thanks, Mike.